All right, let's talk about ISO 14001-2026 Clause 9.3. I know, management reviews can feel a bit dry, but today we're going to completely flip the script on that. We are turning this clause into a high-octane strategic engine for your organization's environmental success. Let's get right into it. So let's address the elephant in the room. Why do so many organizations utterly fail their ISO audits during the management review phase? Seriously, you might think you have every single thing perfectly documented, but lead auditors consistently flag these reviews as a massive point of systemic failure. Why is that?
Well, the core issue is treating these reviews like a boring annual checklist. You know the drill, right? A routine, box-ticking meeting. But that's exactly what they are not meant to be. They should be a high-performance strategic governance mechanism that actually drives evidence-based decision-making. Top management shouldn't just be sitting there passively nodding along to a presentation. They need to be actively engaged, using verified performance evidence to align environmental goals with the company's broader strategic direction.
To fix this, we're breaking down the mandatory inputs for Clause 9.3 today. We're going to cover the management review engine, changing contexts, performance and compliance, audits and resources, and finally, continual improvement.
Section 1, the Management Review Engine, getting an overview of Clause 9.3.
So let's fire up the engine and look at what it actually takes to run this effectively under the new 2026 standard. A management review is officially a strategic evaluation mechanism conducted by top management at planned intervals to assess the EMS's suitability, adequacy, and effectiveness. Put simply, it isn't just a meeting you sit through. It's a vital governance tool demanding active, continuous accountability from your top leadership. It is literally where operational environmental performance connects directly with executive decision-making. Moving on to Section 2, changing contexts, specifically past actions and issues.
Before we hit the gas, we absolutely have to check our rearview mirror and understand the changing context we're driving in. You have to systematically evaluate the status of actions from your previous reviews. Let's say leadership decided to install automated flow control systems last year to cut down on water usage. Well, you need to know, was it actually implemented? Did it hit the expected benefits? Plus, you've got to input changes in both external and internal issues. If your organization is expanding manufacturing capacity, that internal change might suddenly require new environmental permits, or maybe external climate regulations are tightening up. Missing a regulatory shift or completely ignoring a past failure could literally cost the company millions. You can't afford to miss these inputs.
All right, Section 3, performance and compliance, evaluating the data.
Now we're turning our attention to the dashboard. This is the core environmental performance data that tells leadership exactly how the engine is running. Data storytelling is huge here. Top management needs to see realistic progress. Imagine looking at waste generation against a 20% reduction target over your baseline and subsequent years. Is that target actually being met, or are you falling way behind? If you set a massive objective but only achieve a 2% reduction instead of 20, leadership needs to know immediately so they can investigate the root causes and reallocate resources right then and there.
So your dashboard has to include these rapid-fire essential inputs, the extent to which environmental objectives are actually being achieved, information on nonconformities and corrective actions, monitoring and measurement results, and, of course, the fulfillment of compliance obligations. Let's really zoom in on that compliance status for a second. ISO 14001-2026 completely expects top management to know exactly where the company stands legally. It's definitely not enough to just assume you're compliant. You need to evaluate the specific results of compliance assessments and pinpoint any regulatory risks. A good dashboard gives leadership the visibility to spot systemic issues and confirm regulatory compliance proactively rather than scrambling to fix superficial symptoms after a major incident happens.
And here's a huge pitfall to avoid. Presenting raw data without proper trend analysis is hands down one of the most common ways organizations trigger a non-conformance during a lead audit. Seriously. In a lot of organizations, environmental performance indicators like emissions levels or water usage are collected but then just dumped into a presentation. If you show leadership a raw spreadsheet without actually interpreting the trends, like are we improving or deteriorating here, you are completely preventing them from understanding the performance implications. You have to transform those raw numbers into actionable strategic insights.
Okay, Section 4, Audits and Resources, focusing on risks and findings.
Every well-maintained engine has warning lights and a fuel gauge, right? Well, in this case, those represent your audits, your risks, and your required resources. Let's break down what auditors often call the audit trap. It goes like this.
If an audit finding shows inadequate financial or human resources, the resulting system failure is almost always unmet environmental objectives. People are just too overloaded to manage compliance. Next, an outdated monitoring infrastructure, like relying on manual water sampling instead of automated sensors, that directly leads to regulatory compliance violations, simply because the data is inaccurate. And finally, if you ignore internal audit results, you get recurring systemic nonconformities. Failing to allocate sufficient resources directly leads to catastrophic system failures. The crucial takeaway here is you've got to keep a close eye on those fuel gauges and warning lights. Management must thoroughly evaluate internal audit results. Audits provide a fantastic independent evaluation, but honestly, those findings are completely useless without the resources to actually fix them. Leadership has to proactively assess the adequacy of resources. Do we have competent human personnel for handling hazardous waste? Is our technological infrastructure actually reliable? Do we have the financial budget for continuous improvement? By integrating this resource evaluation with a review of emerging risks and opportunities, you keep the entire system fueled, resilient, and ready for whatever future challenges come your way. There's a great quote from the source material that beautifully synthesizes this. It says, "Management review is not merely a formal compliance activity, but a strategic decision-making forum that integrates environmental considerations into business direction." I love that. This is the ultimate strategic forum where leadership actively commits the resources, both human and financial, that are necessary to navigate future environmental challenges and really drive sustainability.
Which brings us to our final section, number 5, continual improvement and driving resilience.
So finally, we reach our destination, synthesizing all of these mandatory inputs to drive continual improvement and business resilience. Let's look at how this builds step by step. Step 1, you collect structured input data, like your audit findings and compliance status. Step 2, top management evaluates those trends and identifies any performance gaps. Step 3, leadership allocates the necessary resources and implements changes to the EMS. And step 4, you achieve proactive continual improvement. The whole process flows so beautifully from step to step. Raw, verified data transforms into strategic executive insight, which leads directly to targeted resource allocation and continuous operational improvement.
And that brings us right back to Clause 9.3. This clause is the ultimate mandate for this entire data-driven process. It ensures your environmental strategy is backed by hard evidence and active executive engagement. It's the standard demanding that your environmental management system is never static, but always evolving. So I want to leave you with a provocative question to take back to your team. Are your management reviews actually driving strategy, or are they just checking boxes? Is your leadership flying blind, or are you driving strategically with a dashboard full of actionable, evidence-based insights? I really hope this explainer has given you the tools to turn your next management review into the powerful strategic engine it was always meant to be. Thanks for hanging out with me today.